let's see. It's interesting. You guys come up with so many questions. I don't always have stuff to talk about, but I put out the question thing, and you guys have so many questions, and a lot of them are good. So recently, this last time, I was someone who watched this video has a friend in television, and he recommended that they recommend me for a Fox 11 coronavirus pandemic special, and I'm like, okay, I'll do it. I've never done that kind of thing before, but I'll do it. And I didn't get chosen. I didn't get picked. I got pitched, but I didn't get picked. And the people they put on were Dr. Drew and Dr. Oz. And it just killed me when I heard that, because Dr. Drew has been wrong every step of the way. He, 3 weeks ago, he was talking about how this was overblown hype, how we're panicking about nothing. And the New York Times even wrote an entire essay about how Dr. Drew is wrong on everything, one of the top 5 deniers, and how even 5 days ago, Dr. Drew said we shouldn't be social distancing. Dr. Oz has almost gotten his TV show revoked, his medical license revoked because of the things he's posted on his TV show. So it just kills me that those are the experts. So I'm up to 4 people that I personally know who are infected. One person in New York City, one person in somewhere around here is his wife, one person in San Diego, his wife, and someone who I won't mention because they're close to me, but that 4th person ended up going to the hospital. He posted an entire thing on Facebook how it seemed like he wasn't going to make it out, and he made it out 3 days later, but I thought he was about to die. So I'm up to 4 of my 1,200 Facebook friends, something like that, who are infected. It's out there. People don't think it's around us, but it's everywhere. There are people who are reporting that it's in their building. And, we're going to start going from knowing people we know who have it to knowing people who've died who's has it. And it's always interesting to me. There's a local South Pasadena Facebook group, kind of like DTLA Town Square, and it's always interesting to see people's reactions in there, because there's a lot of people who are still doubting it's as widespread as it is. We're up to 5 people in South Pasadena who are infected right now. It was 2, then it was 3, then it was 4. It's following the trajectory exactly like you'd expect it to do. And every single time people are like, oh, it's just one family, it's not multiple people. And then I post, yeah, it's probably multiple people. And then people yell at me saying, oh, that's irresponsible to say. I'm like, chances are it's not one family in South Pasadena. And then later it was confirmed that it was multiple clusters out there. You can't see my dog here, but he's wants to be a part of the show. So it's been interesting to watch that. Trump talked about, this press conference was the best one I've seen from Trump. He actually talked about, there we go. He actually is following scientific advice for the first time ever. Trump is following scientific advice, and I'm shocked beyond belief. He actually stated things that were true about the outcome of this. He said the highest death rate will be in 2 weeks. Every single projection I've seen has shown the highest death rate will be roughly Easter until the end of May. The current, I'm not even sure what's in the national order. The state's orders are better because, in Florida, they're still hanging out on the beach. But here in California, thank God we have Newsom and Garcetti. Those guys have saved thousands upon thousands upon thousands of lives by acting when they did. So I want to show you the latest data. So there's a great website. I'm going to flip this. I'm not sure I could flip this around, so you might see it reversed. But there's a great website that actually talks about, that uses the data to actually estimate how long we are going to be stuck in it. And let's go down to California. So right now, this is not going to show up good for you guys. That doesn't show up good for you guys at all. Right now in California, because of the stuff we've implemented at the start, California, we will likely have the most people in the hospital on April 24th. And we will And we've actually flattened the curve here in California to the best of the data we have now. The data is completely incomplete, and this might be wrong, but because we shut down in California, we have flattened the curve in California. And so we have enough hospital beds. We are this short on ICU beds, and we're still very short on ventilators. But California is doing a lot better than everywhere else. So it's interesting. About 2 weeks ago, Seattle, San Francisco, Bay Area, and New York all had similar amounts of cases. Seattle and San Francisco went into complete lockdown much earlier. San Francisco coordinated with the surrounding counties, so it wasn't just the city, it was the surrounding counties that all went under lockdown, and then we went on lockdown about 6 days later. San Francisco and Washington, their curves have been like this. They've been great curves. You know, they're having about, for every case they have, they're infecting about 0.7, 0.8, 0.9 cases. So this social distancing is helping. New York City, they did not enact anything close. Bill de Blasio did a horrible job, kept the schools open way too late. They still have parks open in New York City. And New York City has shot up, and now New York City is one of the most dangerous cities in the world. You know, Italy is up there, but New York City is catching them. Now, there are plenty of other cities that will be like New York City: Chicago, Baton Rouge, New Orleans, Miami, Detroit. These are all cities that did not do social distancing fast, and they're going to have a steep curve. So I know you guys can't see it, but New York is going. As I said, California will have the hospitals will be used the most on April 24th. New York, their highest death rate will be April 6th. New York will probably have about 300 people dying a day. California, the nation will probably have about 3,000 to 4,000 to 5,000 people dying a day on April 14th, roughly. I mean, if you think about that, that's one World Trade Center every single day dying in the United States. But we're pretty lucky here in California that this social distancing is working. You know, we're going to see all these other cities have major issues. And we'll still have issues. We'll still probably have the convention center set up as a hospital, but it won't be the same as New York City. New York City, so I want to talk about some of the things that are going on in New York City right now. Right now in New York City, they do not have enough ventilators, and they're splitting ventilators. That's an unproven thing. You know, it probably doesn't help either patient, but they're just putting a Y tube on there and saying, okay, you guys are getting the same breaths. Fourth-year medical students in New York City are graduating early if they have a New York City internship, and they're just being sent over to the internship. So, they're cutting off the last 4 months of people who are med students in New York City, saying, hey, go work as an intern. They're pulling doctors, dermatologists, radiologists, immunologists to run the emergency room in New York City because they don't have enough doctors right now. The conference rooms and waiting rooms of the hospitals are being made into treatment centers in the hospitals. Right now, they have so many people dying that the funeral homes are not able to pick up enough people, so they have dead people stacked in a refrigerated truck. The convention center in New York City has just been turned into a hospital. I expect that to happen here in California. I expect our convention center in Los Angeles. I expect our convention center to be turned into a treatment center. But it won't be, like, I expect New York City to be fully packed. Like, if you remember what Katrina looked like, what New Orleans looked like in Katrina with all the people in the convention center, that's New York City in a week, maybe less. Here, we're not going to have that. It was interesting. Trump accused a New York City hospital stealing masks. They're like, it used to be they need 30,000 a month. Now they're asking for 200,000. I'm like, because they have so many more people using these masks, because they have so many more people who are sick. There are entire hospitals that are 100% COVID hospitals in New York City right now. You know, I mean, it's just amazing the disaster that's happening. Like, I've seen it discussed as a slow, like it's having a mass casualty event, like a nuclear bomb dropped in slow motion, and that's what it is. So, this is going to happen in New Orleans. This is going to happen in Chicago. This is going to happen in Detroit. This is going to happen in Birmingham. Those are some of the cities that are having horrible, horrible amounts of cases. This will not happen in Seattle, San Francisco, or here, luckily, because we put in social distancing. So I want to talk about the curve slightly. So I'm reversed. So I'm going to try to do this way. We're going to go up April 26th, hit our peak. And right now, roughly July 1st is when we're down. So, for all those counting, when will we be out of this? Circle July 1st on your map. That is likely when California will be at the point where we could lift a lot of these restrictions. Once we're at July 1st, we're at, okay, we've stopped it enough. There's very few people left. And hopefully we have enough tests so that any person who is sick at this moment of time, we could test them and they'll say, yes, you have it. Who's your 10 people you talk to? Isolate those 10 people, test those 10 people. That's what we should have done months ago. If we had enough tests, we could have done that from the start. But instead, that's going to be July 1st, and hopefully by the time we get to July 1st, we'll have so few cases here in California that we could stop that. We could go down. We'll still have cases coming in from everywhere else, but it could be a different world where we could still have restaurants, hopefully July 1st. I don't think we're going to have sporting events this year, but we shall see. So interesting thing that's happening right now is the federal government is picking who gets supplies based on who is nicest to Trump. It was fascinating to watch the press conference yesterday when Trump told online, he said, yeah, I tell Mike Pence, don't talk to the governors of Michigan, don't talk to the governors of Washington, just ignore them because they are not nice to us. If you want supplies, you have to be nice to us. That was his exact words yesterday, and it's actually happening. Like, Massachusetts is one of the worst states, and they got 17% of the gear they asked for. Maine got 1% of the gear they asked for. Chicago's getting nothing. Florida is getting everything they asked for, and they're getting another shipment coming tomorrow, and they're getting another shipment sent 3 days from now. So Florida is getting every supplies they asked for, even though they don't have the worst cases yet. Now, Florida hasn't shut down the beaches, so they will get the worst cases. But right now, Governor DeSantis is a friend of Trump, says Trump is doing a great job. So all of the best supplies are going to Florida. Nowhere else. We're not getting anything. It's also interesting because there are states that have put in orders, and those orders are getting canceled because the federal government is buying them, or a different state is buying them, or a different country is buying them. It's a complete mess in order to get supplies here in the United States because we don't have a centralized, because the federal government basically said, okay, states, you guys go do it. And so now it's 50 states and different cities fighting against each other. So it's really having major effects that the supplies are not going where they're needed, and it's having a major effect. So Trump talked about how there might be 100,000 deaths. If we have 100,000 deaths, we are lucky. And that 100,000 deaths happened because we shut down the country. I'm still getting people who are saying, oh, this is like the flu. My harassing the bar in South Pasadena got picked up by the Wall Street Journal. And so I had these MAGA people who were all over my Twitter account with 10 burners, and it's kind of funny. They have 10 burners, all the same guy, and then he finds me on Facebook and comments on my Facebook group, and they're just saying, oh, the flu only kills 30,000 to 40,000 people, this isn't that bad. I'm like, okay, yes, let's go kill 100,000 people, best case scenario, and that is the best case scenario only because we shut down the country. So I'm going to be furious if we have 100,000 people dead, and then 6 months from now people saying, it wasn't a big deal. I'm like, we would have had 4 million dead if we didn't shut down the country. We'll see how many people die, but 2 weeks from now, it'll be 3,000 to 4,000 people dying every day. Okay, so let's talk about these new tests. So Abbott Lab there are 2 ways to test for this disease. 2 decent ways. One, you stick a Q-tip up your nose, and then you look for the RNA of the virus. And that is very effective in telling you if you have virus back there or if you have virus particles back there. And it's very good for telling you if you have active disease. It doesn't tell you if you had the disease before. The other test is to pull out your blood and look for antibodies. If you have antibodies to the disease, that means that you had the disease in the past and you're now immune. So that test just got approved by Abbott, and they're going to start doing 50,000 tests a day. That's not that much, but at the very least, we could figure out, okay, you're clear, you're clear, you're clear, you're clear, you don't have to worry about it, you could go back to work, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Those 50,000 tests per day will be very, very useful. It needs to be about 500,000 produced per day until we get up there. Now, there have been a lot of questions about, can you get reinfected? I want to just make this clear. You cannot get reinfected by this virus. Once you have fought it off, you are cured. I don't care what you read. I don't care what articles out there. Those people are completely uninformed. Could be Guardian, could be New York Post. Doesn't matter. They are wrong. If you fought off the virus, that means you have antibodies in your system. If you have antibodies in your system, that means you are immune. You could fight it off. The people who are reporting false positives, it could be a couple of things. One, it's the same disease and they didn't quite fight it off all the way and they got sick with something else and now it's back. So it wasn't completely cured. Two, it could be that they still have virus particles in the back of their nose that are all dead. Or three, the first test was wrong and they didn't have a positive test the first time. You cannot get infected with this virus twice. Now, a big fear is, hey, this virus might mutate. And I see that another thing that pisses me off when I see these articles that are not informed enough. There are 11 different mutations of this virus. It does not change this virus in any way, shape, or form. So let's say we have quadruplets. 4 brothers, identical brothers. One person happens to have a gene that changes their eyes to gray. One person has a gene that makes their ears slightly lower. One person has a gene that makes their nose slightly longer. They might have slight genetic differences, even though it's mutations. Every single person here could still look at those quadruplets and say, yes, those are quadruplets. That's the same thing with this coronavirus and our immune system. Yes, there are 11 base pair mutations. Those are not significant mutations. It is still the same virus. There are not 11 different strains of viruses coming around. There are 11 viruses that are the same strain that is very, very slightly different. Now, it's useful in that we could track where these viruses came from, but it is not, you cannot say that, hey, you're going to get infected by this one and then this one. No. Once you're infected by one, you're infected by them all. So there's only one coronavirus out there that is infecting people and causing major symptoms. Now, there are coronaviruses that cause runny noses, completely unrelated, nothing to worry about, different type of coronavirus. The one that kills, there is only one coronavirus out there. Okay, Laura Carlick, you asked many different questions. There have been a lot of normal people who are dying of this. No pre-existing conditions. A lot of normal people who are ending up in the ICU. And the question is, does this mean the virus is changing? No, what this means is that the data out of China was not complete enough that people could have an accurate picture of what was going on. Right now, latest county numbers, about 70% of the positive people in Los Angeles County are under 65. 45% are under 40. Those people still are ending up going to the ICUs, but it's not as bad. China just classified it as organ failure, which is 5%, hospitalization, which is 15%, not hospitalized is 80%. Those not hospitalized still have very bad symptoms, but they didn't make it to hospitalization. Early data in Italy, basically, that happened with a massive amount of healthcare. With good healthcare, you have 5% hospitalized, you have 3% dying, 5% hospitalized, 15%, With good healthcare, you have 3% dying, you have 5% organ failure who recovered, you have 15% who had hospitalized, and then the rest. That's with good healthcare. In Italy right now, they're running out of healthcare, and they're finding that the mortality rate of this virus is about 10% without healthcare. That means if we have 100 people in a high school and we infect them and we don't have hospitals, 10% died. If we have hospitals, it goes down to 2% dying. Without hospitals, 10% dying. So that's the entire reason that we need to quote-unquote flatten the curve so that we could have enough hospitals for everybody. And in New York City, that's what we're not seeing right now. They're not flying the curve, so there's a lot of people that aren't getting hospital care, and they're all dying. I avoid eating food prepared by other folks with colds and flu. Would this be safe? So is takeout food safe? There are risks involved in every single thing you do. Takeout food is a risk. If you want to be totally safe, you just eat cereal every day possible. Takeout food, there is a risk, but it's not that big a risk. Someone who would have to be sick and sneeze on your food or something like that, or sneeze on your box and you touch it and then you take it in. I, for the most part, feel that takeout food is safe. I eat takeout food all the time. I'm trying to support my local businesses, local restaurants. There's a lot of restaurants that's going to fail because of this. But, for the most part, don't get me wrong, there is a small chance of infection with takeout food, but the way it's prepared is not that worrisome to me. They're all wearing gloves. It'd be great if they were wearing masks too, but, I'm not overly worried. I have Panda Express way too many times. An interesting thought that hit me economically, there are about to be a lot of restaurants that go under. Most restaurants operate on thin margins, and unless their landlords say, hey, don't collect rent, they're going to go under. If you want to make a lot of money, you start a restaurant today because it takes about 6 to 9 months of permitting, and by the time you're permitted, all the other restaurants will be gone. That's another story completely. Have the measures taken by the California governor helped flatten the curve in our state? Early data says yes. This is early data, but early data says that what is happening in California has flattened it, has helped. But this is exactly what Italy did, and then Italy blew up. So, this is early data. Hopefully, it helps. Hopefully it decreases. I still think we need police out there, arresting the people doing flag football. And I think that's the kind of things that we really, truly need. Because, if we're lucky, this California social distancing is giving you an R of 0.7. So that means every person gets sick, infects 0.7 people, and then it starts dying down. But, if we got it down to 0.3, we'd be quarantined a lot less. So, okay, let's talk about ibuprofen. So, this thing, Spartacus. Chill. Spartacus is out there barking at the other dogs. This thing has killed me about the amount of fake news going around in the world. I mean, fake news always kills me, but the amount of fake news I see on Facebook. Ibuprofen is safe to take with this disease, and you should take it with this disease. I'm going to tell you 2 reasons why. One, part of the reasons that this disease is deadly is because of other things superinfecting or other things causing organ failure. Say you get this disease and you have a fever of 104. Your organs are not meant to survive at 104, and so they gradually start breaking down. The longer you are at 104 degrees, the more likely you are to enter organ failure and enter hospital and have severe complications. Ibuprofen and Tylenol are 2 different drugs, similar to each other, but they both act to lower temperature. So if you lower the temperature, your organs are less likely to fail. So the important thing to do is have Tylenol at one time, then, you could take it every 6 hours, and then take ibuprofen, which you could take every 6 hours, do 3 hours of Tylenol, 3 hours of ibuprofen, 3 hours of Tylenol, 3 hours of ibuprofen to get the temperature down. The temperature happens because your immune system is attacking things and it raises your temperature. It is not the virus raising your temperature, it's your immune system, and it's important to keep your organs functioning. There are so many people in New York right now with liver and renal failure because of this disease, and that's because of the high temperature along with the virus attacking those organs. But that is why you need to be taking ibuprofen, to keep your temperature down so you don't have these organs starting to fail. Now, where did this ibuprofen is bad come from? It came from one study that was roughly 30 patients, and 6 of them were excluded. So 20 patients on one side, 12 patients on another side. This study has nowhere near the level of power to actually make a decision on whether or not you should use ibuprofen. And people ran with the study, even though most doctors said, hey, wait a second, this is not a good study. We shouldn't be saying this. The French foreign minister did a tweet on it. The World Health Organization did a tweet on it. They both retracted it. They said, okay, this is not accurate. But it goes out there in the world and it doesn't stop. And so I'm getting these videos sent to me of a recording saying from a podcast saying, hey, ibuprofen's bad. No, you should take ibuprofen when you are sick. You should take Tylenol and ibuprofen, go back to back, so that you could keep your temperature lower so your organs don't fail. That's also the reason you drink Gatorade, so you keep your electrolytes up so your organs don't fail. Those are the main things you want to do when you're home. But that's ibuprofen. Let's see. And I don't care what anybody else says about it. I don't care if you know some hospital. It's always a friend of a friend knows a hospital head who said it. They're wrong. If you don't read it in the LA Times or New York Times or CNN, don't believe it. Like, I've seen all these viral posts. I've seen like pictures of stuff. I've had stuff forward to me in my Facebook Messenger. 80% of it has been complete bullshit. So if you see something, Google it, see if you can find it in New York Times, Boston Post, LA Times, CNN. If you can find it in those 4 sources, it's real. If you cannot find it in those 4 sources, it's fake. Let's see. I know that this is not an airborne virus, but should I worry about my apartment's ventilation? My neighbor who is showing COVID symptoms is coughing up a storm, and our heating vents are shared throughout the building. So this is an airborne past virus, but it's only airborne past at a certain level. So, if someone's coughing at you, the reason that it's 6 feet is that's about the level that the virus is at, high enough quantities to get you sick. If you're closer, if you're at 3 feet versus 6 feet, at 6 feet you have 25% the viruses that you would have had at 3 feet. So if you're talking about, hey, my apartment neighbor is coughing and we have connected heat vents, you might get exposed to about 5 viruses. I would not worry about that. That would be great because you might get a very low level infection and then you fight it off. But I wouldn't worry about your neighbor in a different apartment coughing it up. But this is also the reason why hospitals are instituting do not resuscitate on patients, because when you start doing chest compressions on someone, you're spraying viruses everywhere. And it's at high levels. And so, that's why they're no longer doing chest compressions on people who are dying of COVID in the hospitals, because they don't want to get everybody infected, because at that high levels, you might have small parts sneaking through masks. So I want to talk about masks. We're going to have a recommendation coming soon that everybody should wear masks. Masks are good. Bandanas are good. Anything you could do to cover your mouth is good. Now, it's not high enough quality that from what you need in hospitals. In hospitals, you have higher levels of virus concentrations going around there, so you need those special N95 masks. Someone offered to get me a special N95 mask. I said, no, I don't need it. It should go somewhere else. Those simple, paper masks that you have like that, that's good enough for normal people because it will stop most viruses at the levels you see in normal world, But for the most part, if you're social distancing, those masks won't do anything because you're not close enough to catch the viruses. But, they are beneficial. Wearing a bandana around your mouth is also beneficial. It will stop a lot of the viruses. So, if you have 10,000 viruses, you wear a bandana, you might only get 1,000 of the viruses going through. With those medical masks, it's called N95. I might be making this up, but I believe the 95 means that it blocks 95% of those small particles. So that means that's why they need them, because they have such high concentrations of it. But in public, masks are great. You should wear masks. Wash your hands. And, eventually we'll be like Asia, where everybody wears masks. And part of the reason why, Taiwan, South Korea, Hong Kong, Singapore didn't get it is because they're used to these type infections, SARS and stuff like that, and they all have masks, so it doesn't spread. They could still do their public transit. If you're riding public transit, if you're in a place where you have to be with other people, you should have a mask on. I'm not close to other people nowadays, so, I don't need a mask. Let's see. So someone said, I had a severe allergy in January and really bad chest congestion. Could that have been the COVID strain? It was horrible. A lot of people are saying, hey, I was sick in October, November, December. Could I have had it? Answer is absolutely, positively not. This virus, like the flu gets passed, if you have the flu, you have a 0.7, let me rephrase this. For every 10 people who have the flu, it passes the flu along to about 7 to 8 to 9 people. So if you had the flu, you have a decent chance of passing it on to your family. This virus, in normal settings, if you have 10 people infected, they infect 23 people. If you're on a cruise ship, if you have 10 people infected, they infect 70 people. So if you were sick in December and January and your family didn't get the same disease, you would not have it. And not only that, let's say you had the COVID disease in December, November, you would have infected your entire family, you would have infected most of the people you know, and you would know people who are dying, like by January, with how infectious this disease is. So, if you see anybody who says, oh, I was sick in January, oh, I was sick in December, oh, I was sick in November, no, they had a flu, they had a common cold, and please correct them because they think they had COVID. No, they did not have COVID. They had a regular, normal COVID thing. What's up, Raj? All right. Our first case in the United States probably got here roughly January 15th. It's interesting. We had the same number of cases as South Korea at the same number of time. We now have 130,000 cases. South Korea probably has about 1,000 total active cases. And also we're not getting accurate numbers because we're not testing. One of my 4 friends, she's in New York City, has all the classical symptoms of COVID. She never got a test. They just said, okay, you have it, stay in your place. And, she's never going to get a test. There's a lot of people like that we're not testing. So whenever you see, like in South Pasadena, there's 5 current people, that number is probably about 30 to 40 people in South Pasadena currently have the virus. That's a rough number. I would bet the number is above 20. I couldn't tell you the high number. There's probably 20 to 100 people in South Pasadena that has it. How long can someone spread COVID-19 while not showing symptoms but diagnosed positive? So to answer that question, let's talk about the standard course and let's talk about the hospital course. Standard course of COVID-19 is 14 days. Day 1, you are infected. 1, 2, 3, you have no symptoms whatsoever. Day 3, you are infectious. Day 4, you might have, from day 3 on, you're infectious. Day 4, you might have symptoms. 5, 6, 7, you start having pretty good symptoms that you're sick. 7, 8, 9, 10, it's the worst flu of your life. You can't get up, you can't walk, worst pain, hard to breathe, etc., etc., etc. Then days 10, 11, 12, you start getting better. Day 13, you have no more symptoms. You're still infectious until 3 days after your last symptoms. So, repeat, day 1, you get infected. 1 to 3, you have no symptoms. You're infectious from day 3. Day 4, you might feel like you have symptoms. You're still infectious from day 3 on. 5, 6, 7, you're like, okay, I have the flu. Not that bad. I could get through it. 7, 8, 9, 10, oh my God, this is the worst flu of my life. 10, 11, 12, you start getting better. 12, 13, 14, you're feeling fine. You're still infectious until 3 days after you've actually had the symptoms. Now, a similar course happens with hospitalized patients. Hospitalized patients and people who die have the same start of their symptoms. It's 1, 2, 3, no symptoms. 4, 5, 6, symptoms, but not that bad. 7, 8, 9, okay, bad symptoms. 10, 11, 12, they keep getting worse and they get hospitalized. These people are the ones with organ failure. So most of the people who are dying, most of the people who are hospitalized, they were seen by the hospital on day 3, 4, 5. Now, a lot of people say, why weren't they admitted? There's nothing the hospital can do for them at this time. There is no treatment for this disease until you get to the point of organ failure and stuff like that. That's when you get treatment. Maybe, they could get IV fluids, but, there's not much that the hospital could do. That's why the hospitals send these people back home at 4 and 5 and tell them, stay home, hydrate, Tylenol, Advil, ibuprofen. But, it's the same time course. Then 10, 11, 12, they start getting sick. And then roughly, it's fascinating how everybody dies in days 14, 15, 16. Now, because of this long time course, day 1 infected to day 10 symptoms, this social distancing will take 10 days till we actually see the results in our data. If this person's locked up, they don't infect anybody else for these 10 days. But the people who got sick 9 days ago, or people who got sick 11 days ago, they're just showing up to the hospital right now. So, that's why the data is early. That's why it's hopeful in Seattle and San Francisco, because they're not getting the high death rates that New York is getting. They're not getting overloaded like they were expected to. UCSF, they're like, okay, we're prepared, and then the patients haven't come yet, but everywhere else they have come. That's a similar. I have a doctor friend, and they're like, we're prepared, but it hasn't materialized here in Los Angeles yet. Let's see. Immunity post-infection and the likelihood of herd immunity if 80% get the virus, as some predict. Herd immunity. This is a hard question. I'm not even sure what this question is. So herd immunity means that if 70% of the people have it, if one person gets sick, they won't find anybody else to transmit it to. That's what herd immunity is. That's the entire theory behind vaccines. We'll get to herd immunity once we get to about 70%, or if we change our lifestyle so that we're not naturally next to each other. Herd immunity, if you go to a sporting event and 70% are vaccinated and 10 people have it, those 10 people are still going to infect a lot of people because there's a lot of people that they're in contact with. But if you talk about a city with 70,000 people and everybody's in their homes, there's not that many people that they can infect and the disease will die out. Basically, that's what that's the ultimate goal of this. Get a vaccine so that we could actually make people immune, or 2, slow it down and so we infect slow enough people till we get to that number and the virus dies out then. There's problems with the second thing, but that's harder to explain and I won't get into it. So order of operations, Chad, is you do parentheses first, then multiplication and division, then pluses and minuses. This is the thing that Chad sent a question on. So it's parentheses, then multiplication, division, then it's pluses and minuses. That is the way you're supposed to do it. Also, there's one shoe here, there's 2 shoes up here. That's a trick. Okay. People are making do-it-yourself masks to fight coronavirus. Do they actually work? I read that the only mask that the CDC considers safe is the N95 mask, as the N95 masks adhere to strict protocols to block out airborne particles, including viruses, in ways that are cotton and elastic can't. So like I said, cotton and elastic, they could get rid of 70% of the viruses. These N95s get rid of 95% of the viruses. They're meant to be single-use masks, but now they're being used for weeks on end because we don't have them in New York City. And Trump accuses the New York City hospitals of stealing these masks and selling them in the black market. Fascinating. Grocery stores. Do I pay for delivery instead? So I posted a video of the farmers market here in South Pasadena. I didn't think it was safe at all. The farmers market should be one side and people come in and out, and there should be one entrance and one exit so that, people flow. The farmers market was very, I wouldn't say chaotic, but there was lots of people mixing close to each other. Grocery stores here have done a really good job. I've been grocery shopping twice, I think, since this happened. And the first time, they had a line outside where everybody has to line up 6 feet away, and then they allow certain people in so that it's not overcrowded. You have space to get it. And the grocery stores have been about 60 to 70% full. They have all the stuff that you could want, and then they check you out. It's pretty safe in the grocery store. Like, don't get me wrong, everything has risks, but the grocery stores are pretty safe. So I'd recommend it. So this is something interesting. So about 2 weeks ago, when the shit was hitting the fan, everybody ran to the grocery stores and bought everything they can. And I realized it was going to happen like the day of or something like that. I'm like, oh shit, I should go to the grocery store. So I went to Target. And when I was at Target, I was fascinated by what people were buying. People were not buying the right foods for being locked up. as I've explained, we're never going to have a toilet paper shortage. We're still pooping the same amount every single day. And, the toilet paper factories know, hey, we need to produce this much. So everybody who bought all those toilet papers, it doesn't matter. We're going to get a new shipment. We should have shipments that are full in the grocery store by the end of the day of toilet paper. What I found fascinating about Target is that everybody was buying milk, eggs, everything that expires in mass quantities. Those were the things that were gone. The cereal was still there. The granola bars were still there. The sodas were still there. Those were the things that you should have been mass buying if you were going to be stuck somewhere or worried about shortages. But, all these people bought the eggs and milk. And it hit me today, hey, I bought myself 3 salads. Those salads are expiring today. So all those people who bought gallons of milk, gallons of eggs, they're about to all go bad. Or they're having scrambled eggs for the next 3 days. So it was just fascinating to watch how people who are hoard buying stuff bought the wrong stuff. So this is why you should watch zombie movies and see what they need. I have enough cereal that expires till April 2021. So I'm like, okay, I have 10 boxes of cereal. If I need to survive, I can survive on cereal. And, cows are still being milked. I'll still be able to get milk. Okay. Not sure if it's predictable, but any thoughts on how long the safer at home order will be for California? Like I said, circle July 1st. That's when I think the safer at home California order will be removed. I think it'll be replaced by something else, but I think July 1st is roughly about the time when we will have restrictions removed here in California. So that is 90 days from now. That means that the NFL could probably start having their training camp. Well, actually, I can't say that. NFL is screwed in a lot of ways because there are some states that will be worse than others. Kansas City, Florida, they'll get hit later than us. They won't be able to have things. I would be shocked if Major League Baseball starts, MLS starts. I would be shocked if NFL starts on time. And it's quite possible that all of these leagues will just say, okay, November 1st, we're safe to start. We're all going to play. And you'll have NFL, NBA, MLS, and Major League Baseball all playing at the same time. Well, maybe not baseball because it's too cold. But, it would be... I think you're about to get all the sports playing at the exact same time the second this order is removed. And, the NFL stadium, SoFi Stadium, had a positive worker. It's going to slow down construction, but I don't expect NFL to kick off September 6th. It'll probably be November, and they'll just have their 17 weeks going through February. And it'll be fascinating because we'll have so many snowed-in games. Our local restaurants... Hi, Josh. Our local restaurants are really struggling right now. About 1/3 will go out of business by the end of April. Would it be possible for them to reopen as long as they have outdoor seating that's spaced 8 feet apart, the tables? So someone is asking, can we open restaurants if they have outdoor seating or if they take precautions? Absolutely not. If you allow a little bit, there will be complete slippage. There will be bars that are open. There will be restaurants that have fully seats. The second we open restaurants, we're back to where we were 2 weeks ago, where it's spreading nonstop. The best things we did was close the schools, but I don't expect restaurants to be allowed to be opened until July 1st. And that's part of the reason that I said, if you wanted to start a restaurant, today is the day to start it, because it takes 6 to 9 months to get permitted. And by the time you're permitted, you'll be the only restaurant that's still alive and allowed to do sit-down restaurants. But we should not relax the rules on restaurants. I personally am trying to eat out as much as I can to support the restaurants that I like. I know that not everybody can do that. You need to be sure you have rent. You need to be sure you have your own safety. If you can afford to, eat out. Support the people, restaurants, because they won't be there if you don't. Okay, I've covered the aspirin, acetaminophen, ibuprofen, and naproxen. Aspirin and ibuprofen, back and forth. Any thoughts on how we deal with this on a longer-term basis until the vaccine? Folks keep asking out 2 weeks or whatever. My sense is that we're going to need some workable approaches to manage the spread of the disease for a long time. So we're about 11 months from getting a vaccine at the earliest possible time. Come July 1st, California will be out of the woods. Because New York is going to hell right now, they will be out of the woods come June 1st. There will be other places that are out of the woods at different different moments of time. Like if you watch the 1918 pandemic flu, St. Louis and Philadelphia were dying like there's no tomorrow, and it was like 8 to 9 months later that it hit Minnesota, and then they were dying like there's no tomorrow. So, there will always be places in the United States that this is bad for. I wish we could just seal off the borders of California, because then we'd be good. If we could seal off California, it's like, okay, we're good then. What's going to happen is we're going to have massive changes in society until we get to the point of eradicating this and getting a vaccine. We'll have stuff that, say we get to July 4th and the cases are down here, we're still going to have social distancing. I would be shocked if schools start in September. I don't think they would be allowed to. I think it would be another 6 months of social distancing. We'll have mandatory masks if you're on a subway. I don't believe that sporting events will be allowed. If sporting events are allowed, we'll have people taking the temperatures of every single person entering the sporting event. And they'll probably be passing out masks. I think that's the only way that we'll have sporting events this year. But, the main thing is that we have to, once we beat the cases down to as low as possible with social distancing, we have to do everything possible, keep them as low as possible. And that would mean, like, your kids will probably get their temperature checked every day at school. This is what should happen. I'm not saying it'll happen. This is what should happen. This is what the doctors would recommend. This was what the experts would recommend. There might be arrests, people with, there might be mandatory quarantines. If you're sick, you probably get mandatory quarantine. If you're caught out while sick, ideally we'll have cops out there with sensors that check temperatures. If they find a sick person, they're like, okay, you are John Smith, you are sick, you need to go home for 14 days. And if John Smith is seen outside again for 14 days, then they get arrested. That's the kind of thing that will need to happen. Granted, it's not going to happen, but, that's the kind of society that I see us in until we get a vaccine. That's what should happen. Let's see. How do you combat the people on social media that compare COVID-19 to H1N1 as far as infections and deaths are concerned, as another way of saying Obama sucks and Trump doesn't? Anybody who still compares this disease to any other disease in the past, I just call them a fucking moron. There's no better thing to say outside of saying, you are an idiot, no one should trust this idiot, and move on with life. You're not going to convince that person at this moment of time that they're wrong. If they're at this moment of time saying, hey, this is similar to H1N1, they're just ill-informed. And the important thing is to quarantine those people and be sure that those people don't convince anybody else that they're right, So that's why at this moment of time, anybody who says it's a flu or anything like that, I call them idiots. And I say, I can't believe that, it's important to come at them strong. Don't just say, hey, you might be wrong here. No, they've already had that by this moment of time that, hey, they might be wrong, and they still believe that. I have a Charger friend who believes this is related to 5G cell service. It's long past the time of saying, hey, you might be wrong. No, they're just idiots, and you need to call them idiots so that no one else thinks it. So someone asked me, have you switched specialties? All right, that one just pisses me off. I'm not going to do that. I wonder if doesn't everyone who... So Jenny, Phoebe, you're asking the same thing I talked about antibodies before. Basically, there will be baselines of if you have this level of antibodies, you are immune. If you don't, you're not. We do that nowadays for measles. Whenever I go to a new hospital, like every 5 years, I have to get my blood drawn to show I don't have measles or hepatitis C, and they check the antibody levels. And as long as I have good antibody levels, I don't need a new vaccine. When am I going live today? Right now. Why aren't we checking temperatures like they do in so many other countries? We should be checking temperatures. It should be mandatory that everybody gets their temperature checked the second they go into work. If I owned a business, I would have a thermometer gun where I checked everybody's temperature. That's what we need to do. Who was the best bachelor from all the shows before and after the finales? Colton Balacher. I almost tried out for the Bachelor back when I was a club promoter in LA and a doctor. Another story, but I would have been in the final 10 to do the interviews for the Bachelor, but I didn't have time. I was going off to be a doctor. Mariana, I was wondering how long will the virus, I was wondering if I have the virus, how long is it safe to say that neither my son or my husband is not going to get sick? I started having symptoms a week ago, high fevers, 103, headache, fever, mild cough. So this person has the virus. They're sick right now. Their husband and son is in a different room, and she's wondering how long will it be till she knows they don't have it. She is sick and infectious until 3 days after her last symptom. So if her last temperature is on Monday, she is infectious until Thursday, and Friday she's no longer infectious. So if her last symptoms are Monday, she's infectious till Thursday. She's wondering when is it safe to know that her husband and son is not infected. There are 3 days from infection to fever. So effectively, if you are sick on Monday, if your husband and son are not sick by the following Sunday or Monday, they did not catch it, most likely. Some people have it asymptomatic, but that's most likely. How long until large conferences and conventions will be allowed again? I don't think large conventions and conferences will be allowed again till probably July of 2021. Like, that is a disaster. A convention where you have people from all countries coming to a central place, countries or states to a central place, and getting together and talking and eating and being in the same area. Boston had a conference where there was 3 infected people. 71 people after that conference was infected. So, if you have one person infected at a big conference, you can end up with 100 people leaving that conference infected. I don't think conferences will be allowed to happen until, probably, at least 15 months. In his favorite spot. No more questions? All right, that's it. I'm going to do another post asking if people have questions. I might not do a video based on if I have enough questions next time. Right now, there's not that much happening. Everything that I was talking about happening is happening. So, I've run out of predictions of sorts. So, all right.